Stop for a second. Look at your life. Look at the decisions you made that led to pain. Look at the money you lost. Look at the health problems you have. Look at the time you wasted. Who told you to make those decisions? Did you come up with them yourself? Or did you listen to a man in a suit, a man in a white coat, a man with a PhD after his name? You did what you were told. You followed the best practices. You followed the science. You followed the consensus. And look where it got you. You are suffering from a disease called authority bias. It is a glitch in your primal code that was useful 10,000 years ago, but is lethal today. In the tribe, the shaman was the expert. He knew which berries were poisonous. He knew when the rains would come. If you didn't listen to the shaman, you died. Trust was a survival mechanism, but the shaman had skin in the game. If he was wrong, if he fed the tribe poison, the tribe would kill him, or he would die with them. His fate was tied to your fate. Today, the shaman has been replaced by the expert, the economist, the dietitian, the financial advisor, the political analyst. But there is one critical difference. They have no skin in the game. If the economist predicts a boom and the economy crashes, does he lose his job? No. He gets invited to CNN to explain why the crash was unforeseeable. If the financial advisor puts you in a fund that loses 40%, does he lose his fee? No. He takes his 2% management fee regardless of whether you retire on a yacht or under a bridge. If the politician starts a war that kills thousands, does he go to the front line? No. He retires to a board seat at a defense contractor. You are taking advice from people who profit from the process of giving advice, not from the outcome of that advice. This is the principal-agent problem. You are the principal. They are the agent. Their incentives are not aligned with yours. Their incentive is to sound smart, to keep their job, to please their peers, and to secure funding. Your incentive is to survive and prosper. These two goals are often mutually exclusive. Let's look at the midwit crisis. You assume that an expert is a genius. You assume they are in the top 1% of intelligence. Usually they are not. They are midwits. They are people with slightly above average IQs who are very good at memorizing rules and very bad at understanding reality. They are good at school. They get the degrees. They get the credentials. But school is a closed system. In school, there is always one right answer. The teacher asks, you answer, you get a cookie. Real life is an open system. It is chaotic. It is complex. The midwit expert tries to force the chaos of reality into the simple models he learned in school. When the model fails, he doesn't blame the model. He blames reality. He blames you. The market is irrational, the trader says. No, you are wrong. The market is reality. Your model is a fantasy. The patient is non-compliant, the doctor says. No, your protocol failed to account for human complexity. You need to understand the Milgram experiment. Decades ago, psychologists proved that normal, decent human beings would electrocute a stranger to death if a man in a white coat told them to. Please continue, the expert said. The experiment requires that you continue, and people pushed the button. They heard the screams, which were fake, but they didn't know that, and they kept pushing the button. Why? Because the primitive brain cannot disobey the alpha. We are hardwired to offload our cognitive responsibility to authority. It is painful to think for yourself. It is terrifying to stand alone and say, no, this is wrong. It is much easier to say, I was just following orders. I bought that stock because the bank recommended it. I ate that food because the food pyramid said it was healthy. This is the excuse of the slave. And the experts know this. They use their credentials, the suit, the jargon, the title, as a weapon to bypass your critical thinking. They are hacking your submission instinct. Let's talk about the Gell-Mann amnesia effect. This is the most bizarre phenomenon in modern psychology. You open a newspaper or a website. You read an article about a subject you know very well, maybe your job, or your hobby, or your local town, and you see that the journalist has no idea what he's talking about. The facts are wrong, the names are wrong, the cause and effect are reversed. It is garbage. You laugh. You say, wow, the media is incompetent. Then you turn the page and you read an article about Ukraine or about interest rates or about a new virus, and you believe every word. Why? Why do you assume they are lying about the thing you know, but telling the truth about the thing you don't know? It is the same newspaper. It is the same class of people. It is the same deadline pressure, but you have amnesia. You forget their incompetence the moment you step out of your circle of competence. You assume there is a God in the newsroom checking the facts. There is no God. There is just a 24-year-old intern copying and pasting from Reuters. There is no expert consensus. There is just a group of people in a room agreeing with each other so they don't get fired. Consider the replication crisis in science. You love the phrase, trust the science. It sounds religious, and it is. Because science is not a person. It is a method, and the method is currently broken. In psychology, medicine, and sociology, studies have shown that more than 50% of peer-reviewed papers cannot be replicated. That means the results were random noise. S&P hacked data, or outright fraud. Half of what you read in scientific journals is fiction. Why? Because of incentives. A scientist does not get funding for saying, "I tested this hypothesis and nothing happened." He gets funding for saying, "I found a revolutionary new correlation." So he tortures the data until it confesses. He finds a pattern where there is none, and then the media picks it up. New study says coffee cures cancer. 3 years later, another study says coffee causes cancer. And you are the ping pong ball bouncing between these headlines, destroying your metabolism because you trusted the science. Real science is doubt. Real science is skepticism. Real science is "I don't know. Let's test it again." Corporate science is marketing with a bibliography. Let's look at the financial shamans, the active fund managers, the people paid millions to pick stocks. Statistically, 90% of them fail to beat the S&P 500 over a 10-year period. A monkey throwing darts at a newspaper performs just as well as the average hedge fund manager, and the monkey charges lower fees, yet we pay them billions. Why? Because we cannot handle randomness. We cannot accept that the market is a chaotic beast. We need to believe there is a wizard who controls the weather. We pay the expert not to make us rich, but to make us feel safe. We pay for the illusion of control. And when the crash comes and the wizard is exposed as a fraud, do we stop believing in wizards? No, we just hire a new wizard. That last guy didn't understand the new economy, but this new guy, he has a better algorithm. You are stuck in a loop of seeking a daddy figure to save you. This is infantilization. The modern world treats you like a child. Don't do your own research. That's dangerous. Don't self-diagnose. Ask a doctor. Don't manage your own money. Hire a professional. They are trying to disable your agency. They want you to be a passive consumer of their services. If you can fix your own car, the mechanic starves. If you can heal your own body, the pharmaceutical industry starves. If you can manage your own wealth, the bank starves. Their business model depends on your learned helplessness. They need you to be incompetent, so they use jargon. They invent complex words for simple things to make you feel stupid. They build walls of regulation and licensing to prevent you from entering their domain. They call it safety. It is not safety. It is a cartel. It is a monopoly on truth. You must understand the Lindy effect. This is your only weapon against the fake experts. The Lindy effect states that for non-perishable things like ideas, books, technologies, the expected life expectancy is proportional to its current age. If a book has been read for 2,000 years, like Marcus Aurelius, it will probably be read for another 2,000. It contains truth that has survived the test of time. If a best-selling book came out last week, it will probably be garbage in a year. The expert usually peddles the new diet, the new economic theory, the new pill. The new has not been tested by time. It has hidden risks. It has side effects that we won't see for 20 years. Trusting the new expert makes you a guinea pig. You are the test subject for their theories. When they told you to put asbestos in your walls, that was the science of the time. When they told you to smoke cigarettes for your throat, that was the expert consensus. When they told you to eat margarine instead of butter, that was health advice. They were wrong. They killed people, and they moved on without apologizing. But you are still listening. You are still nodding your head when the man on TV speaks. You need to develop a filter, a biological firewall. You need to stop asking what are his credentials and start asking what is his incentive. Does he suffer if I suffer? If the answer is no, then his advice is noise. If the answer is no, he is not a shaman. He is a salesman, and you are buying a lemon. We are just getting started. We have exposed the structure. Now we need to look at the specific lies. We need to look at how they manipulate the data. We need to look at how they use complexity to hide their crimes. We need to look at the expert industrial complex. You think you are free? You are living in a prison built by people who claim they are protecting you. It's time to check the locks. Let's talk about the wall. There is a wall between you and the truth. It is not made of brick. It is not made of stone. It is made of words. It is made of acronyms. It is made of Latin. It is made of mathematical formulas that look impressive but mean nothing. This is the weaponization of complexity. Throughout history, the ruling class has always used a secret language to exclude the peasants. In the Middle Ages, the Catholic Church conducted Mass in Latin. The peasants spoke the local dialect. They couldn't understand the Bible. They needed the priest to interpret the word of God for them. This gave the priest absolute power. He could say God said anything, and the peasant had to obey. Today, the high priest is the banker, the lawyer, the doctor, and they still speak Latin. They just call it legalese. They call it quantitative easing. They call it idiopathic. Why do they do this? Do you think they use big words to be precise? No. They use big words to paralyze you. When you hear a word you don't understand, your brain freezes. You feel stupid. You feel small. You think, wow, this must be very complicated. I'm not smart enough to understand. I better just trust him. That is the trap. Complexity is the camouflage of the fraud. If something is true, it is usually simple. If something is honest, it can be explained to a 10-year-old. If an expert cannot explain it to a 10-year-old, there are only two possibilities. complexities. He doesn't understand it himself. He is trying to steal from you. Let's look at the financial sector. This is the epicenter of the crime. Wall Street invents complex financial instruments, CDOs, swaps, derivatives, structured notes, not to create value, but to hide risk. In 2008, they sold mortgage-backed securities. They bundled thousands of garbage loans from people who couldn't pay into a shiny package. They paid the rating agencies to stamp AAA on it. They sold it to pension funds. They sold it to your grandparents. They called it diversification. It wasn't diversification. It was toxic waste wrapped in Gucci paper. When the crash happened, they said it was too complex to foresee. Lies. It was designed to explode, but the complexity allowed them to extract the fees before the explosion. This is the model. Privatize the gains, socialize the losses. When the complex gamble wins, they get the bonus. When the complex gamble fails, you get the bailout bill, you get the inflation, you lose your house, and you still listen to them. You walk into a bank and the advisor shows you a chart with sharp ratios and beta and alpha. He's throwing sand in your eyes. He's trying to distract you from the only number that matters, the fees. He doesn't want you to see that he's taking 2% of your money every year, regardless of performance. Over 30 years, that 2% eats 50% of your total wealth. He is not an advisor. He's a parasite attached to your wallet, singing you a lullaby of jargon while he sucks your blood. If you ask him, "Can you explain this investment in one sentence?" he will stammer. He will get defensive. He will say, "It's nuanced." Nuance is the refuge of the scoundrel. There is no nuance in math. Either it makes money or it loses money. Now let's pivot to the medical industry. Disclaimer, I'm talking about the system, not the emergency surgeon who saves your life after a car crash. Acute care is a miracle. Chronic care is a business model. We have moved from a model of cure to a model of management. A cured patient is a lost customer. A dead patient is a lost customer. The ideal customer is a patient who is alive but sick for 40 years. This is the maintenance model. You go to the doctor with high blood pressure. Does he ask about your sleep? Does he ask about your stress? Does he look at the poison you are eating? Maybe for 30 seconds. Then he pulls out the pad. He prescribes a pill. Take this every day for the rest of your life. He didn't solve the problem. He masked the symptom. But the pill has a side effect. It damages your stomach. So you go back. "Doctor, my stomach hurts." "Ah?" he says. "Here is a pill for your stomach. Now you are on 2 pills. The stomach pill causes insomnia." "Ah?" he says. "Here is a pill for sleep. Now you are on 3 pills. This is a cascade of intervention. You are not healing. You are decaying slowly while paying a subscription fee to Big Pharma." This is what Nassim Taleb calls iatrogenics, harm caused by the healer. In the past, doctors killed people by bleeding them. They thought it was the science. Today we look back and laugh. How stupid they were. Do you think we are at the end of history? Do you think in 100 years people won't look back at us and laugh? Can you believe they fed people chemotherapy for minor issues? Can you believe they prescribed opioids for back pain? The expert consensus created the opioid crisis. Experts said OxyContin is not addictive. They had charts, they had studies, they had the FDA stamp, and they created a generation of junkies. Why? Because the incentive was to sell the pill. The expert was not looking at you. He was looking at his quota. You need to understand the concept of the fog of war. Consultants, academics, and bureaucrats love the fog. If a problem is simple, the solution is simple. The bridge is broken. Fix the bridge. But you can't bill $500 an hour for fix the bridge. So the expert says, we need a feasibility study. We need an environmental impact assessment. We need a stakeholder alignment workshop. They turn a 1-week job into a 2-year contract. They add layers of complexity to justify their existence. They create process. Process is the enemy of outcome. In a large corporation or a government, people stop caring about the result. They care about following the process. I followed the procedure, the bureaucrat says, as the building burns down. I checked the boxes, the doctor says, as the patient dies. The process protects the expert. It gives him plausible deniability. It wasn't my fault. I followed the guidelines. The guidelines are the shield. They shield the incompetent from the consequences of their stupidity. So how do you spot a fake expert? How do you distinguish a master from a charlatan? Here is the heuristic: simplicity versus complexity. A true master has reached the other side of complexity. He understands the subject so deeply that he can explain it in simple words. He doesn't need jargon because he has truth. Einstein said, if you can't explain it simply, you don't understand it well enough. The charlatan, the midwit, is stuck in the middle. He knows enough to be dangerous, but not enough to be clear. He uses complexity to hide his insecurity. He gets angry when you ask simple questions. It's too complicated for you to understand, he yells. That anger is his tell. That is the sign of a fraud. A master is never threatened by a question. A master loves a question. A charlatan fears a question because it might pop his balloon. Look at the prediction industry. Turn on the TV. Look at the pundits. They predict the election. They predict the stock market. They are wrong 50% of the time. Literally a coin flip, but they speak with 100% confidence. The market will crash. Candidate X will win. They never say, I don't know. They never say maybe, because maybe doesn't get you invited back to the show. Confidence sells. Certainty sells. You are buying certainty. You are addicted to certainty. And because you crave it, they supply it. Even though it is fake, they are selling you a map of a territory they have never visited. And when you get lost in the woods using their map, they are nowhere to be found. We need to talk about the agency problem in your own life. When you hire a lawyer, you think he wants to win your case quickly. Wrong. He charges by the hour. His incentive is to make the case drag on, to file more motions, to create more conflict. If he settles the case in one day, he makes $500. If he fights for 3 years, he makes $500,000. Is he evil? Not necessarily. He's just responding to incentives. He convinces himself that thoroughness is good for you, but it is only good for his bank account. You must view every expert as a potential adversary, not because they are bad people, but because their interests are not your interests. They want to extract resources from you. You want to solve a problem. The intersection of those two desires is very small. You are walking through a minefield, and the people selling you the mine detectors are the ones who planted the mines. So what happens when you realize this? What happens when you realize the map is fake? You feel vertigo. You feel panic. If I can't trust the doctor, the banker, the lawyer, who can I trust? That is the right question, and the answer is terrifying, but it is also the only answer that leads to freedom. We are going to talk about the solution. We are going to talk about how to become your own expert, how to build your own board of advisors who actually have skin in the game, how to read the raw data and ignore the interpretation, how to reclaim your agency from the rental class. Because right now, you are a passenger in a car driven by a blind man who gets paid by the mile. It's time to grab the wheel. So you are standing in the ruins. You realize the shaman is a salesman. You realize the king is naked. You realize the science is often marketing. It feels lonely, doesn't it? The child in you wants to cry out, but who will tell me what to do? Nobody. That is the price of adulthood. If you want someone to tell you what to do, join a cult or go to prison. There, you will have plenty of certainty. But if you want to be free, you must become the final authority on your own life. You need a new operating system. You need a filter that catches the lies before they enter your bloodstream. Rule 1. The skin in the game. Razor. This is the most important rule of your life. Never ever take advice from someone who does not suffer if they are wrong. If a financial advisor tells you to buy a stock, do not ask, is it a good stock? Ask, show me your portfolio. If he owns it, listen. If he doesn't, he is selling. If a doctor prescribes a new experimental treatment, ask, would you give this to your own child? Watch his eyes. If he hesitates, run. You must demand that the expert shares the risk. The Roman engineers were forced to stand under the arches of the bridges they built when the scaffolding was removed. If the bridge collapsed, the engineer died. That is why Roman bridges are still standing 2,000 years later. Today, the engineer sits in an office 1,000 miles away. That is why our bridges crumble. Seek out the Roman engineers. Seek out the wealthy investor who eats his own cooking. Seek out the bodybuilder who lives his own protocol. Ignore the overweight dietitian. Ignore the broke economist. Their life is the evidence. If the output doesn't match the theory is trash. Rule 2. The triangulation method. You are the CEO of your life. The expert is just a contractor. When you renovate your kitchen, do you hire the first contractor who knocks on the door? Do you let him set the price and the timeline without checking? No. You get 3 quotes. You compare them. Why don't you do this with your health? Why don't you do this with your law? Never rely on a single point of failure. If a doctor gives you a diagnosis, go to 2 more, ideally from different hospitals. If they all agree, it's probably true. If they disagree, you have entered the zone of uncertainty. This is where the truth lives. When experts disagree, the fact dissolves into opinion. And when it is opinion, you get to decide. Watch them argue. Read the conflicting papers. You will realize that the consensus was a lie. You must become an intelligence officer. You gather human intelligence from multiple sources. You strip away the bias and you synthesize your own picture of reality. Rule 3. Via negativa, the power of subtraction. Experts always want to add. The economist wants to add a regulation. The doctor wants to add a pill. The trainer wants to add an exercise. The banker wants to add a hedge fund. Why? Because they can charge for addition. They cannot charge for subtraction. But in complex systems, like your body or the economy, addition usually causes side effects. The solution to most problems is subtraction. You are unhealthy. Don't add a supplement. Remove the poison. Remove sugar. Remove alcohol. Remove stress. You are broke? Don't add a complex investment scheme. Remove debt. Remove stupid spending. You are unhappy. Don't add a new hobby. Remove toxic people. Nature heals by by removal. The body heals when you stop poisoning it. The wallet grows when you stop bleeding it. The expert hates via negativa because it makes him irrelevant. He cannot sell you nothing, but nothing is often the cure. Be suspicious of any solution that requires a new purchase. Be open to any solution that requires a deletion. Rule 4. The grandmother heuristic. Who has more skin in the game regarding your survival? A PhD researcher funded by a pharmaceutical company, or your grandmother? Your grandmother loves you. Her genetics are inside you. If you die, her lineage dies. She has the ultimate incentive for you to thrive. Also, she carries Lindy knowledge, wisdom that has survived for generations. Eat soup when you are sick. Get some sun. Sleep it off. Don't spend more than you earn. Simple, boring, free, and usually 100% correct. We discarded this wisdom because it wasn't scientific. It didn't have a peer-reviewed study, but it had the study of evolution. If a cultural practice, like fasting or prayer or family dinners, has survived for 5,000 years, it serves a purpose. It contributes to survival. If a modern practice, like eating seed oils or staring at blue light, has existed for 50 years, it is still in the experimental phase. Do not be the lab rat. Trust the wisdom of the ancients over the data of the moderns. The ancients survived. The moderns are obese, depressed, and medicated. Who is winning? Rule 5. Distinguish techne from episteme. The Greeks knew the difference. Techne is know-how. It is the mechanic, the surgeon, the pilot, the plumber. These people deal with physical reality. If the pilot is wrong, the plane crashes. Trust the pilot. Trust the plumber. Trust the trauma surgeon who is sewing your leg back on. They get immediate feedback from reality. They are usually competent. Episteme is know why. It is the economist, the sociologist, the political theorist, the nutritionist. These people deal with abstract theories. If they are wrong, nothing happens immediately. They can spin a narrative. Doubt the theorist. Trust the hands. Doubt the mouth. If someone works with their hands and deals with physics, they are likely telling the truth. If someone works with PowerPoint and deals with models, they are likely hallucinating. Rule 6. The fuck you fund. We talked about this in the money section, but it applies here to truth. It is hard to disagree with an expert if you are dependent on the system. If you need the bank's loan, you have to nod at the banker's advice. If you need the employer's check, you have to agree with the HR consultant's nonsense. Independence is the prerequisite for truth. You need resources. You need to be able to walk away from the table. When you don't need them, you can see them clearly. You can laugh at their threats. If you don't do this, you will be ruined, says the expert. No, I won't. You say, I have gold. I have land. I have skills. I am fine. The moment you stop fearing them, their hypnosis breaks. Authority relies on fear. Remove the fear and you remove the authority. The final vision. The Ronin. In feudal Japan, a samurai served a master. He had a place in the hierarchy. He was safe, but he was a servant. A Ronin was a masterless samurai. He had no lord. He wandered the land. He was often poor. He was often hungry. He was judged by society, but he was free. He lived by his own code. He trusted his own blade. You must become a Ronin in the modern world. You walk through the institutions, the banks, the hospitals, the universities, but you belong to none of them. You use them as tools. You enter, you extract value, and you leave. You do not give them your loyalty. You do not give them your mind. You keep your counsel. You consult your inner circle, your family, your trusted friends, your own reason. Is it dangerous? Yes. You might make a mistake. You might diagnose yourself wrong. You might invest wrong, but it is your mistake and you will learn from it. If you follow the expert and fail, you learn nothing. You just become a victim. If you lead yourself and fail, you become wiser. The path of the sovereign is a path of scars, but a scar is proof that you live. A scar is proof that you were in the arena. The expert has no scars. He has only paper cuts. So the next time a man in a suit tells you it is complex, smile. The next time a man in a white coat tells you trust the science, check his funding. The next time a journalist tells you the consensus says turn the page, look in the mirror. That is the only expert you can trust. And if that person in the mirror is ignorant, educate him. Read the books, read the studies, learn the math. Nobody is coming to save you. But the good news is you don't need saving. You just need waking up. The alarm is ringing. Get up.